Hello everyone, my name is Shwana Khan Yusufzai and I'm a Microsoft certified trainer at GTechLearn. Today I'm going to deliver a webinar on the topic Azure Compute Services. We will have a 45 minutes webinar, and in the last 5 minutes we will see for the questions and answers round. Before starting a webinar, let's discuss the agenda, that what topics will be covered in this webinar. First, we will be dealing with the top level concepts in Azure Compute Services. Then we will be seeing some very nice features of compute services using the practicals on the Azure portal. And then we will have the question and answers round, in which we will be dealing with the questions and answers. Before moving to the top concepts which we will be covering, first let us understand that what is Azure Compute Services. Because we know that we are living in a world where work from home is preferred nowadays very much big, especially after the COVID era. People are willing to work from home rather than going to their on premises office and doing the work. So the importance of cloud computing has become very much popular these days. People are shifting their on premises data center to the cloud so that they can access their data, the services from anywhere in the world at any time they want. Azure is also a cloud computing platform which is provided by the company Microsoft. If we talk about the Azure Compute Services, it is a very on-demand computing service which is running on the cloud-based applications. That means you will be using all the machines, all the processors, all the networking, everything, but the speciality or the uniqueness will be that everything will be done or performed on the cloud. If we talk about Azure, it provides us various computing services like disks, processors, machines, networking, operating system. It gives you a full virtual desktop to work on. Like, you will have a full virtual desktop on the cloud on which you will be working, and once your work is completed, you will be switching off that virtual desktop. That means you are going to pay only for the amount of time you are going to use that service. Now suppose if we are working on a on premises center, what happens? If you want to do some work on computer, you have to buy that computer. Now suppose your work was only for 5 months. After 5 months, if you do not need that computer and you have to switch to some other place, then that computer is of no use. Now, suppose we are working on a cloud-based structure and we are using a virtual desktop on the cloud. What happens? You will be using that system only for the amount of time you want to work on, like for 5 months, and you will be paying only for those 5 months. After that, you need not to pay anything for the virtual desktop which you are using on the cloud. So you see that how cloud computing is not only beneficial, it is saving your time. You can access it from any location, but also it is so economic that you only have to pay on a consumption based model, like a prepaid model. How much you are using, that much you are paying. So if moving to our next slides, we will see that here we will be discussing some very good compute services offered by Azure, like virtual machines, app services, container instances, Azure Kubernetes services, and Windows Virtual Desktop, followed by the demos for them. These are the top level concepts which I already talked about, which we will be studying in the next few minutes. Now let us move to Azure virtual machines. What do you understand by virtual machines? Okay, virtual machines, as the name suggests, machines, those are virtual. That means machines which are running in the cloud. They are just the software, you can say, counterpart of the physical computers, and they will have everything virtual, like whatever a machine needs, like a processor. Like in our own computer on which we are working, we have a processor, we have a memory storage mounted on that device. Here everything will be virtual, like the virtual processors in those virtual machines, virtual memories, virtual storage devices, and virtual networking as well. And there will be also an operating system which the virtual machine will be hosting, and you can install and run that software just like you do on your own physical computer you have with you at your homes or offices or schools. Like when you are using a remote desktop client, you can use and control the VM similarly as if you were sitting in front of it. So if we talk about virtual machines, they are an ideal choice while working on the cloud. Now moving to the next, there comes virtual machine scale sets. What are virtual machine scale sets? They are the resources provided by Azure that you can use to deploy and manage a set of identical VMs. Like suppose you want to implement or and install 10 identical VMs, then that case is also possible with the cloud services provided by Microsoft Azure. You can, using the scalability sets of virtual machines facility, you can deploy and manage a set of identical virtual machines with the same configurations. So when you have to deal with big compute, big data, and big analytics, then you will need such type of scalable virtual machine sets. So it is very, you see, this is a very pretty feature of virtual machines. Moving to the next slides, we will discuss about Azure App Services. What do you understand by app services? With Azure, as the name suggests, app services. So using this service by Azure, we can quickly build, deploy, and scale the enterprise grade webs, mobiles, and APIs, application programming interface, running on any platform. That means you will be able to develop and host your apps using this facility provided by Microsoft Azure. And the performance, if we talk about the performance, the scalability, the security, and the compliance requirements, it is too good when we are working on the cloud. Means there is because people think that when we are moving to the cloud, security is the first thing which comes in their mind, that whether the applications, the services I am using will be secure enough or not. Then Microsoft assures you about your, Microsoft Azure ensures you about your security in that case. So we see that app service is platform as a service offering. While we talked about virtual machines, those were infrastructure as a service based offering by Microsoft Azure, but this app service is a PaaS, that is platform as a service by Azure. So here you can see it's also given PaaS, that is platform as a service. Next, before moving to this next slides, we will see that when we are talking about Azure functions, we are only concerned about the code which is running your service, and we are not concerned about the underlying platform or infrastructure. Why? Because it is a PaaS, that is platform as a service. You only have to worry about the code. Next are Azure Logic apps. Logic apps are also similar to functions. Now, don't get confused between the Logic apps and the Azure functions. We will see the difference between them as well. Azure functions and Azure Logic apps, they both enable us to trigger logics based on an event. Like some event comes and then the working and the processing will start. When functions execute code, Logic apps, they execute workflows. Like functions are executing the codes and apps are executing the workflows. If we see, the difference lies here, that functions are more connected to the code part of your work, whereas logic apps, they are more connected to the workflow part of your event. Like every Azure Logic app workflow, it starts with a trigger which fires when a specific event happens or when newly available data meets specific criteria. So if you see the basic difference between functions and logic apps, functions are normally stateless, but logic apps, they are stateful. Functions are code first, like they are mostly code based. They are more concerned about the code part. And logic apps, they are designer first. They are more declarative, or you can say visualized form of representation. Now, for functions, each activity is an Azure function, and you have to write code for those activity functions. But in logic apps, there are a large collection of ready-made actions. If we talk about management, then REST API, Visual Studio, they are the examples of functions. And if we talk about logic apps, we have Azure Portals, we have REST API, we have PowerShell, we have Visual Studio as well. Now functions can run locally or in the cloud, both, in both conditions, but logic apps, they runs only in the cloud. So this was the difference we checked between the logic functions and the logic apps, which are types of the Azure App Services. Moving to the next, Azure Container Instances, in which we will also see Azure Kubernetes Services. So these both things, a container instance and Kubernetes services, they are Azure compute resources which are used to deploy and manage the containers. Now, what do you understand by containers? The first thing which comes in mind. Okay, containers, because Azure Kubernetes and container services are used to deploy the containers. The first thing which comes in anyone's mind is, what are containers? So much like running the multiple virtual machines on a single physical host, you can run multiple containers on a single physical or virtual host. But in the case of virtual machines, you were also managing the operating system. Remember, when we talked about the VMs, we also talked that we have to install the OS on the VM and then run it. But when we are talking about the containers, you need not to worry about the operating system. So their containers are lightweighted and they are designed to be created, scaled out, and stopped dynamically. Okay, so this is the basic difference if we see between the containers and the virtual machines. If we talk about Azure container instances, it is a service that provides the fastest and simplest way to run a container in Azure without having to manage any virtual machines or adopt any additional services. This is also a platform as a service based offering by Microsoft Azure. You are not concerned about the infrastructure part now. Now, if we talk about Azure Kubernetes services, the task of automation, like managing, interacting with a large of numbers of containers, all these things is done in Azure Kubernetes service. Basically, this whole process is technically known as orchestration. The task of automating, managing, and interacting with a large number of containers. This task is known as orchestration, and Azure Kubernetes service is a complete orchestration service for containers. So we see that we have how we have container instances and Kubernetes services, which are creating a lightweight virtualized environment, which is different from VMs and more faster than VMs to use. Then we come with Azure Virtual Desktops. What do you understand by Azure Virtual Desktops? Or what do you understand by normal desktops? See, like a desktop we have on a physical computer, we have with us physically available. Similarly, the desktop which we are using on those Azure virtual machines, they're Azure virtual desktops. So it is a desktop and application virtualization service that is running on the cloud, and it helps the users to use a cloud hosted version of Windows from any location. Like, you can use the cloud hosted version of this operating system like Windows from any location at any time in the world. And Azure virtual desktop, it also works across the devices, not only like which have Windows OS, but also having Mac OS, iOS for iPhones and MacBooks, and Androids and Linux. So it works with the apps that you can use to access remote desktops and apps. All those apps which are dealing with the remote access, it works with all those remote accessed apps. Now, why we are using Azure virtual desktops? See, because it is time saving, it is cost saving, it gives you better user experience, and it also ensures you enhanced security. If you talk about some very cool features of Azure Virtual Desktop, it has a simplified management, and also the performance is very good, and it can reduce your costs to a great extent. Like, only you are paying for the resources you are using, for how much amount of time you are using, you will be using the virtual desktops. Okay, now after completing these things, we know that we have to come to the demo part. In demo part, you will be seeing that how you are going to create the virtual machines, how you are going to create the app services and deploy Azure container instances. So for that, let me take you to my screen. Okay. Let me share my screen to show you the, okay. So first, let me take you to the Azure portal. Okay, let me take you to the Azure portal. Portal.azure.com. This is the home page of Azure portal. And here, whatever service you want to work on, you can type on this search box or the all services blade here. You can search from the all services blade here, whatever service you want to use, or you can directly write here. Now, like I'm going to create a virtual machine here, so I will write virtual machines. I already got this in the option here. I am going to click it. There is no virtual machine to display. Let me create a virtual machine and take a remote desktop session for the same. Okay. Now I'm going to create a virtual machine. Let me fill in the basics. Subscription, I already have a subscription here, so it is written Azure Pass sponsorship. I have an Azure Pass. Resource group, because every compute service needs to be associated with some type of resource group, because these compute services are resources, and every resource needs a parent resource group to be attached to. Because I haven't created any resource group yet, I'm going to create a new one from here. Okay, I'm going to create a resource group named webinar demo. This is okay. The name of my virtual machine will be webinar VM. Okay, this has taken. The location will be East US. Availability, no infrastructure. Let all the settings be default. Let me change this image. I want a Windows server. Let me take Windows 10 Pro. The size, the selected image is not available. See a different image. Okay, let me change because this is not available. Let me take Windows Server 2019 data center. Let me change the location. Okay. The size is currently unavailable. Let me change the size then. Let me create it again because that was not available for that region. Resource group I have already created. No, I haven't created. Webinar demo. Okay, virtual machine name webinar VM. Let me change Azure Edition. Okay, now this has taken the image, and the size is, we have two virtual CPUs for 8 gigabit of memory. Username, let me keep it the same. Webinar VM. Okay, so this is available. Password, let me keep it as webinar VM at 2022. Let me confirm the password. Webinar VM at 2022. They are matching. The ports I will be taking the RDP session and HTTP port number 80. Next, go to the review section. Let all these settings be kept to default. No need to change the settings. If you want to modify, you can modify, but I am not modifying anything here. I'm doing on the default values. Okay, then management, advanced, no need to change. Tags, no need of putting tags. If you want to put a tag, you can put here by providing the name and values here. Let me create this virtual machine quickly and show you, because we don't have much time. So the validation passed. Now let me create this virtual machine. This will take some time to deploy. It also depends upon the speed of your internet. If you are having a good internet speed, maybe this task will be completed in a less time. So the deployment is in progress for the virtual machine. Once this machine is deployed, I will take a remote desktop session. That means I will host that virtual machine. I will open that virtual or install that virtual machine on my host computer, the one which I am using. Whatever OS you want to use with this VM, you can provide in the basic settings. You saw there in the basic settings, you have Ubuntu, you have Linux, you have Windows OS, different versions of Windows. So you can select, and what other features you want to configure, you can also do that from that deployment section. So the deployment is complete. Let me go to the resource which I have just created. You can also go to the resource by typing here virtual machines and selecting the virtual machine which you have just created. So see, this machine is running in East US. The public IP address is also given here. Now let me connect this VM to my host computer by taking the RDP protocol, remote desktop protocol. Download the RDP file, open it. Let me install it. First connect it. Username was webinar VM and password was webinar VM at 2022. The credentials did not work. Please enter new credentials. Why? Sometimes it doesn't take that easily. Okay, let me check what's the problem. Okay, is not ready. Because it's not ready, we are not able to take the remote desktop session for the same. Once it is ready, we will be able to take the remote desktop session. Let me check for the issues that it's reporting. The internet is slow. Okay, meanwhile, let me create a web app here. Let me create a web app. I will be writing app services. See, you already got in the option app services. Create an app service. Okay, resource. I have already created one resource. You can use the same or you can create a new one. Let me create a new one with the name function app. Okay, the name of the web app will be, let be web app demo. Is not available. Let me keep the name as KYZ web app demo. Okay, publish. I will be using the Docker container. Operating system Linux, central region. Let it all be as it is. Next, we will go to Docker. Options, single container, image source quick start. If you want to change from here, you can change as well. I have changed the image source to Docker Hub. Access type is public. Now you have to put the options here. I am creating a web app. Let me go to the GitHub page. See, this GitHub page shows you how to create a web app. All the details you can see from here. Let me use this image and tag value which is provided here and put it in this section. I will be directly using this and seeing that. Monitoring. You can use this GitHub site. This is very useful. You will see all the details that how you can create different, how can you use the different services on the Azure portal. No need to change these settings. Go to review and create. So the validation has passed. Let me create the service. The deployment is in progress. And we will get a web app here deployed, and we will see that how we can use it. See the details like for the web app is given here. Once we have created the web app, we will be going to test the web app, all the procedures which is given here. So the deployment is still in progress. And after that, we will be making a container instance. You can see here from the GitHub site that how you can create a container instance and how you can verify the deployment of that container instance as well. So this site is very useful. Now let me take you to the resource section. Now see, you have this URL here. I'm going to test this web app I have created. Let me click on this. See, the web app you have created, you can test this web app. It displays welcome to Azure Container Instances. So we have successfully deployed a web app, and we have also tested that web app on the Azure portal. Next, I'm going to create a container instance. Let me take you to the home page. So using this URL, it simply takes you to that browser page from where you can use your app, and you can use different things on your, you can use different features on your app and make it more appealing and effective. Now taking you, I'm going to deploy a container instance here. So let me write in this git container instance. See, it's here already. Now I'm going to create a new container instance. Resource group, you can use the same or you can use the new one. I'm going to use the new one. The name will be webinar container. Okay. Container name will be my container demo. Okay, this is taking it, no problem. Whatever you want to use, you can use from here. See, in the GitHub, we are going to, because use the same URL from here, we will be using image source, Docker Hub or registry. Okay, I will be using Docker Hub or registry public, and let me paste this URL for image here. Control C, Control V, no problem. Windows OS, we are using Linux. Let it be same, and then we will go to the. So I have, for image source, I have selected the Docker Hub, and the access I have kept to public so that anyone can view. I have given the URL also for the image. Next, let us go to the networking section. Here I have to provide a DNS name label so that whoever has that label can access my container page which I am creating. Let the name be my container demo 01. Okay, let me go to the advanced section, tags section, review and create, and I will quickly see whether this validation is passing and I'm able to create my container or not. Okay, the validation passed. Now let me create this. It will take some time. Hope it gets deployed easily. You could have used the same container also, the same resource group also for creating the container. Remember that once your all the resources you have made are done, you should delete those resources and resource groups as well, so that you don't have to pay any extra cost if you are not using the resources. So it is a better option you go and remove those resources by deleting them. So the deployment is complete for the container instance. Let me go and check that whether it is working or not. Let me test it. How I will test it? Here on the overview page, you are getting all the information like webinar container, the status is running, the location, the tags. Because I haven't given any tags, so it's not showing here. The OS is Linux. I am going to copy this fully qualified domain name and check whether this is working or not. I have copied this and I'm going to paste it FQDN fully qualified domain name here. Okay, so I successfully created a container instance and also tested it on my browser using the FQDN. Now here we have various charts. You can see this will keep changing with time, from where you can monitor the containers which you have created. So this was all about container instances. Let me go back to the virtual machine section and let me check that whether it's still working or not. Let me connect this, take the RDP session. If it will not be working, I will try to make a new webinar VM machine and show you. The name was webinar VM and the password I kept while deploying it was webinar VM at 2022. Okay, now let me check whether it is working or not. Okay, so it is still not working. Let me quickly create another virtual machine. There must be some error. Virtual machines, I can easily go from this section in virtual machines. Let me delete this one. Yes, and let me delete this one. Now I'm going to create a new virtual machine. This one is already in progress of deletion. You can see from the notifications bar here, executing delete command. Let me create a new VM. Meanwhile, it is being deleted. Resource group, let me create a new resource group because I'm doing again all the procedures. The name of the resource group will be virtual machine RG resource group. Okay, the name of the virtual machine will be virtual machine 01. Let me change it to operating server to 2019. This size is not available. Let me change it and see. This is also not available. Okay, let me change the location. Okay, now it has taken. The location I've changed to East Asia. We have Windows Server 2016 data center. Image size is 2 virtual CPUs with 8 gigabit of memory. Let the machine name be virtual machine 01. Let the password be virtual machine at 01. Virtual machine at 01. All these settings I will again change. Disks, networking, and let me quickly create this. Okay, validation passed. So I'm creating a virtual machine again here. Due to some problem, I was not able to take the RDP session for that machine. It happens sometimes, no problem, no need to worry for that. The deployment is in progress. It is still in progress. This delete command succeeded. Okay, let me go to the resource. Let me log in once again to my portal. I've created the virtual machines 01. This is running on Windows. Okay. The status is not yet ready. Let me refresh it. The agent status is not ready. I'm not able to take the pro RDP session for this. Let's try for once whether it's ready or not. Virtual machine at 01. Maybe this is not ready. Okay, now this is ready. This virtual machine is now ready to use. I'm taking the remote desktop session for it by providing the same username and password which I used there while I was creating that virtual machine. The username was webinar virtual machine 01 and the password which I kept the same password I've provided here, that is virtual machine 01 at 2022. So you can see that I'm able to see the virtual machine on my host computer here. Okay, so this virtual machine is now available on my host machine and you can use any feature you want from here. See, this is the Windows. Whatever you want to use, you can just use it like your same host computer. So this was how we created a virtual machine on Azure Portal and how we connected it to our host computer by taking the remote desktop session for the same. Now let me quickly close this virtual machine because we have very less time with us now. So this was all about creating the virtual machine. Let me stop the share and come to the question sections. Share the screen. Okay, let me quickly take you to the question sections now. Before that, so in the demo section, we saw how we created the virtual machines, how we created the app services, and how we created the Azure container instances. Okay, this if you scan this QR code, it will take you to the upcoming events by our organization GTechLearn, or also you can register from the URL provided here from this URL simply, and you can check for the upcoming events by the organization. Well, that's all for today, for today's webinar. Thanks for attending. In next 5 minutes, we will be dealing with the questions and answers related to the webinar. We have just learned the new things. We will be dealing with some questions and answers. So first thing, the question is, which service should be used when the primary concern is to perform work in response to an event that needs a response in few seconds? What comes in your mind when you see this question? I already told you that we have Azure App Services, in which we had logic functions and logic apps. So which service are you going to use for this? Okay, my screen is visible. One sec. So which service are you going to use when you think about this? Like in response to the, you get an event and you have to use some type of service, like suppose a timer request comes, and then in that case we have read about Azure Kubernetes services, Azure functions, Azure app services. So here if we see, we have Azure functions serviced by, okay, my screen is not visible. One sec. Sorry for the interruption. Yeah. So we have Azure function services, which we can use here when our primary concern is to perform the task in response to our event. Then we will be using the Azure functions. They are event based services by Azure. An event comes and you will be dealing with those events. It does not need any type of virtual machines to be deployed, and also here the answer will be Azure functions. Now moving to the next question. Which Azure compute resource can be deployed to manage a set of identical virtual machines? So for if you want to create identical virtual machines, you will be using the scalability feature provided by Azure. So here the answer will be Azure virtual machine scale sets, which is available to provide you with the feature where you can deploy a large number of identical VMs when you are dealing with big data and big computes. Now moving quickly to the next question. A company has a team of remote workers that needs to use Windows-based software to develop company's applications, but the team members are using various operating systems like Mac OS, Linux, and Windows. Which Azure Compute Service would help resolve this scenario? We have already talked about Azure Virtual Desktops, which gives you the feature of using any type of OS you want on your host computer. So the answer for this question will be that the team members should use the service of virtual desktops provided by Azure. So this was a quick self understanding and learning process. Like we saw the compute services, we did the practicals on that, and then we checked that whether we are able to answer these short and easy questions after studying all about the compute services or not. So thank you for attending the today's webinar. We will be seeing some very new concepts coming in the future also, and we will be delivering the webinars on that too. Thank you so much.